All right, we're alive. Welcome to FIFO, Flow In, Flow Out. Danny Marowinski here with my boy Samnang Man. This podcast is goes live every Monday at 6 a.m., Friday at 4 p.m. Catch you on your commutes, both to and from the work week. And this is really about raising the collective vibrations. Samnang and I have been talking a lot about everything from personal development to business to life and how we're trying to basically become better human beings every single day. We've been bringing on guests and getting their insights and their inputs, and all of this, the whole concept around this, right, is how do we grow together? And Samning and I are here growing in public with you guys. So this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about a retrospective of the podcast. We are in episode 20. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Coming from a Zoom call to here we are, man. Like full blown 20 episodes into a podcast.
Yeah, 20 episodes, man. Well done on the introduction. And really, I think the concept of everything that we've been doing is just organic. I think the organic marketing, the organic content creation behind the podcast is really, I think for me, it's a very transformative process because I really knew I wanted to go into like coaching and do something similar to this where I started podcasting, but you came along at the right time and, I just kind of just joined the program and just did it all together. And it's been exciting. And just sometimes where I sit back and reflect, and today's episode is basically we're just going to reflect a little bit on the 20 episodes that we've had, and we've had a handful of guests now, 5 of them, and then we do have some more lined up as well too. And being able to get people to come on to the podcast, share their message, share their struggles, share some of their wins and some of the stuff that their desires are or what they want is exactly what I think I wanted the podcast to eventually grow into, and it's amazing to see how it's kind of turned out, but Damon, let me know your thoughts about like how it's grown, and I think it's just fantastic, and it's helping me a lot with building my coaching community and Peak Performance Academy. So, and myself, I've grown tremendously by one using podcasting as a way for self-expression and for getting other people to have a platform to be able to express themselves as well too. Yeah.
No, I think we've done. I mean, it's interesting, right? And so I say this all the time, and I think this is a testament to actually practicing what I preach to, which is there's you can do whenever you start something new, right? You can do basically you have two options if you're actually going to start it. There's also a third option in which you never start that I'm not going to talk about that. But right now, there's two
Of
options when you
course.
start something. Option one is you study, you do a ton of research. Maybe you take a month, 2 months, 5 months, a year, a couple of years of prepping yourself to get ready to start. And you're solving all of these problems that you don't currently have yet, but you're mitigating for those problems in the future, such as, when we first started this podcast, the very first one is on a recorded Zoom call, right? Like
Yeah.
and it was really haphazard. It was Sam Nang and I connecting together. We hadn't talked to each other in over 20 years, and just connected over the type of social media content we both share. And we were like, hey, we should chat. And then the next episode, Sam Nang is like, hey, let's record it and turn this into the podcast. And just by that sheer act, it forced me to then go figure out, like, okay, so we're going to do this. Well, where do I share it? Right. Like, I know YouTube, that's one easy one. Right. But now I got
Yeah.
to set it up on Spotify. Well, I've never set up a Spotify account before. Right. But I at least want to get it on a platform in which people can enjoy it, listen to it, learn from it. But the whole point wasn't, hey, let's set up our Shopify, let's set up our YouTube,
Yeah.
let's get our messaging, let's get our branding, let's get this, let's get that, let's get the website, let's get all these pieces in the puzzle together before we started. It was, no, let's just start and then let's figure it out as we go.
Hmm.
So in the process of doing that, I've learned, I think one thing that's important to note in my reflection of these last 20 episodes is I honestly just enjoy doing this. Like I actually get pleasure, I get joy out of talking with you, Sam Nang, and I've learned
Yeah.
a ton from you. It's inspired me today. I actually did like I biked about 10 miles and I ran like a 5K in the middle of it with
Okay.
a local group. So I'm spinning up a little local entrepreneur group, and we're doing a physical activity first thing in the morning, and then
Nice.
we're connecting later and chatting about how we're growing our businesses. But just like that really came a lot from how the way that you view fitness, the way that you are actively hitting the gym, mastering your body. That's another thing that I've taken away from my interactions with you, right? I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on my mind by the time we first started talking and we first started this podcast, but I realized through the podcast I didn't have control over my body yet, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not able to mold my body in such a way that I want to look. um, and I've been able to connect those dots now of like, well, being able to prove to myself that I can generate the body that I want is another level of mastery with my mind as well, mastering over the body, right? And those are concepts that I've gotten just from our communication,
Yeah.
and just learning from you, right? So, as I think about this podcast and I bring that up, the point really here is I think the trick to some of this stuff is you just got to get started, and then you just got to keep showing up. And it's so cliche, but it's so true.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a huge testament to it, right? So
Yeah.
since
Absolutely.
then, I've learned about this new platform that we record on. It's called Riverside. So I think we started using that on episode 2. We
Hmm.
got off of Zoom.
I think so. Yeah, something around that episode, which is good. And I mean, it's a nice platform. I even use it outside, even for you, like introducing it to me. I use it to record some of my coaching modules as well too. And so that's both the relationship between doing the podcast. I've grown exponentially. Right. I wouldn't say I just grew linear. I grew like this, and that's good in a way where you could leverage a lot of people's talents and like you say, like when I first started kind of being a little bit more putting myself out there and talking about coaching, lifestyle coaching, talking about like uh, mental health, I was kind of scared. I think we get this conception that or idea that like people are like we're not scared. I'm very scared like all the time. Like I had to put myself out there and public speak and in which I'm not the most comfortable, but the more I do it, the more comfortable I get with it. And like you said, the whole pushing yourself outside the comfort zone a little bit, you start to get incrementally like better. I'm proud of our podcast. Like the last one I shown, that's where like we're building these assets of our content, our work, uh, and putting it out there and being able to share with people. It makes them want to join on it. I think I asked my coach when I was before I was starting to build like a coaching community. I was like, how do I get all these like the resources and stuff? And she literally like it's like she said she literally said when you build they'll come. They'll eventually find and I was like the people you'll find the people at the community. I was like okay, and I just went for it, right? So I just started putting myself out there, started putting the website, started talking more on Instagram, and naturally I attracted you, and that's very organic, right? Even for something that we just we connected through social media and everything, and also too like some of our guests that we have on here are watching, they like it, and they vibe with some of the same messages. So when they do come on, and there's a lot of people are nervous. Some of the messages they're like, "What did I talk about? What did I talk about?" And it's like, well, just be yourself. Like I always coach people, is just be yourself and just naturally talk. If there's anything that's on your mind that you want to talk about, you feel like you want to get off uh, your chest, or just be a part of what we're doing. And naturally, I think a lot of people are coming. So I think we've had like 5 guests, and having those people on and bring in their value and their content and be able to be a part of their community and they could be a part of our community, to me is very exciting. It also helps me in my coaching community because part of this podcast is being able to kind of flex our muscles when you talk about digital marketing, your area expertise, and my area expertise is personal development, mentality, mindset, and like training, physical training, and everything. So one, it hits so many different aspects and not just like one, right? So Yeah, I think so many benefits, so many things that I have learned and being able to coach people and having people become vulnerable with us. I think that last episode with Judson, to me, that was like, wow. I really felt like Oprah. Like Oprah had like those type of episodes where people were just like, and you're like, dang, he really was very, very courageous in what he said, and we're still continuing to have the conversation, right? Knowing that like he put himself out there and he shared his message, and to me that was very courageous act, and it was like super cool to see.
And I think that that's also something to be said of, and this is the part too where looking back and like where we're going, what is this podcast about, right? And I think at first it was, well, let's just start. And then now we've had a couple guests and we've got some good content. And I mean, I can't agree with you more. Like last week, with Judson being on, or the last episode with Judson being on and hearing his story, and giving him a platform to open up about it, right? And giving him a space, a safe place for him to share the story. I mean, that's pretty powerful. And it's funny because I think you think about that stuff, right? Like when you start something like this, and there's selfish reasons why I think we start these things too, right? Why we dedicate this time and energy and effort. And, I can speak to that as well. Like my selfish part of it was, I wanted to learn how to do this, right? Like I wanted to upskill myself. I wanted to learn the skill set of podcasting. I wanted to be able to say that I have a podcast, that I've done a podcast, and I started to learn more about it. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Um, and I'm sure you have your reasons too. How this obviously can benefit your personal brand within your personal coaching. It brings more value to your community that you're building over there. And so that's the selfish part of it. But then there's this other piece of it that I think we're starting to enter into that's really exciting, which is more of the selfless part of it, where it's okay, we're actually creating a platform for people to come and feel safe and share their story. And if that helps them,
Yeah,
right, I mean, that's a huge win. And as people consume the content and things like that, I think it's the shift, at least for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, Samnang, but the shift for me is now I'm thinking more about the audience, more
yeah,
about how can we bring more value back to the audience? Who is our audience? You know, who is the type of person that wants to consume this type of content with all the content choices that they have available, right? Why pick us?
yeah,
And how can we better serve that audience?
yeah.
Um, and the whole thing's starting to become more audience driven, right? And more impactful around that end. Um, and that actually kind of tees me up to something that I've been pondering. So I found another podcast for those of you that are interested in growing your own podcast. If you're watching this to kind of see how Danny and Sam Nang are literally pulling this out of our asses as we go, right?
It's my whole life.
Yeah, this is the first time that like I actually put some research and like thought into it. And he brings up a really interesting point as far as being able to define the audience, right? Who is your audience and how do
Yeah,
you define them? And one part of that is demographics, which I think we're all very familiar with, right?
yeah,
Male, female, age, location, jobs, blah, blah, blah. But then there's two other pieces that go along with that. That's psychographics. So psychographics is the metrics of where people
psycho.
are currently at their current state, right? And it's a very interesting concept in digital marketing because in digital marketing, that's what they're going after. They're going after the psychographic of their demographic. They're trying to find people who, right then and there, are going through
Same thing.
something in their life that their product can alleviate or attend to. So it could be something as simple as, finding the person that's sick of looking at themselves in the mirror because they're overweight,
Yeah,
or finding somebody that is ready to upgrade their wardrobe just because they has had a big influx of capital and they're looking to, upgrade their status through their wardrobe, or buying a house, or the list can go on and on and on of all these different life events. Something as simple as, I'm sick of using, should I use charcoal toothpaste over the regular toothpaste, right? Like whatever. But finding those pieces, the little piece of where people are at, that
yeah,
is the symptom. right? So the first part of the psychographic, so demographic, then the next part of the syntax is the symptom. So what is the symptom that people are feeling? And for that, for this podcast, I kind of look internally, right? So what's my
Yeah.
symptom? And my symptom is I want to learn. I want to become better. I know that I do best by learning through doing, not through studying or
Yeah.
lecture. So that's something
By
that
doing.
helps me. I think we're also realizing that this whole thing's kind of we started broad. I think we always had the idea of like, well, maybe we could help. It would be cool to connect with like our high school,
Yeah.
graduation class because that's, obviously that's where Sam Nang and I first met. And we've had a bunch of guests from our high school, except for one. I think Philip wasn't in our
Yeah.
high school, but
Yeah.
that's been really cool because I've been able to catch up with these people, and you've talked with them probably more recently than I have. But I've been able to catch up with these people that I haven't talked to in years. And even when I did talk to them, like if I think about Brent,
Yeah. It's been a while.
like Brent and I don't think we shared but more than, I don't know, a couple hundred words in
Yeah.
high school, so we weren't like active friends. I would consider him a friend just because like I knew of him and like I wished him well, but like it was
Yeah.
more of like a friend acquaintance,
Yeah.
right? So to be
Acquaintance.
able to like catch up with him today, 20 years later, and to hear where he's at and what he's done and hear his story of how he went through wrestling. And I had no idea of his dad's background. I had no idea of that relationship that you guys shared in wrestling. And it was really fascinating to me, right? So, um, I think that that's one thing that it's like, and maybe this is something we can start to look at to start with the podcast is maybe the demographic portion of that is our graduation class, and maybe that can expand beyond our graduation class to Lake Braddock as a whole. Then that can then expand, right? You can always
Yeah.
expand the demographic, but maybe it starts with that. The symptom is where were you then and where are you now, right? And kind of catch the world up on that front. And then the other piece of it has to have a tangible outcome. So that's the second part to the psychograph. So
Tangible
it's
outcome.
yeah, so it's demographic. It's the first psychographic is symptom, and the second psychographic is tangible outcome, which means that if they consume this, they will get something of action to take away.
Yeah.
So even what I just described and us trying to figure out what to do with like how we're going to continue this podcast in the direction we're going, even if you're interested in starting a podcast, like there's a tangible outcome for you right then and there, right? Of like writing down that syntax. So, I think the tangible outcome piece is interesting, right? So when you start something like this, I think that there's always the fairy tale dream story of like this thing blows up, hundreds of millions of downloads per month, and like, we're the next Joe Rogan, right? Um, of course, there's always like big dreams like that. I think when you start anything, and that's the
Yeah.
exciting part because you don't know where it could go or where it is going to go or where it's going to take you or what it's going to do. Um, but I also think that there's something to be said as far as, and it's not so much niching, but becoming very specific and intentional,
Yeah.
right? And I think that that's kind of where we're starting to head. And as I think about this more and more, I'm realizing like, catching up with these people and learning their stories, I now have more of a vested interest in what they're doing.
Hmm.
And I know for a fact, like I literally just went running with my chiropractor today, right? And knowing what Ben's trying to do on the spine side, it's like I'm already thinking in the back of my mind just because I had that conversation. I'm like, I wonder if I could connect him with my chiropractor. He's doing some
Yeah.
big things out here in Florida. Could they create some synergies that take off and do something? Maybe, right? And some of it too is like, would it make sense to like I know with Eamon and trying to run a 5K this year and he's on this big health kick, it's like, dude, you should talk to Sam Nang,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting on like how it's kind of coming about, and I'm wondering if maybe something the tangible outcome could do is just maybe just like what has happened with us, Sam Nang, is like being it like reconnect with your your high school graduation class on a
Hmm.
level that you haven't connected before
Yeah.
with, right? Um, I don't know.
I mean, I think we talk a lot about like organic, like marketing, and then like from the word. So like when I went to college, you hear the word networking, 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 and I was always like, why does it has to be like networking? It feels like, handing like somebody a business card, shaking their hand with a business coat and everything. And like throughout like college and stuff, I just made like relationships, friends, connections and stuff. And those are the type of people that you know, resonate with our message and resonate with me. That's why like, when we talk about like authenticity and stuff, when I started producing like or making content, I was thinking a lot about like the audience and what they would think and everything. But I went a lot more the second go around where after I started going through all my mental health issues, I was like, I think people need to be a little bit more authentic and being themselves. And in that process of me just saying what I was struggling with, being authentic about not always being 100%, because for when I started doing videos and stuff, I didn't have any issues. Like I was like going crushing, motivation, woo woo, and like nothing on the other side. But when like life started to hit me, and I was like, this is actually real. Most people go through a lot of this stuff, and it forced me to just be a little bit more honest, more authentic and stuff, and share the stuff that I enjoy. I think when I start to share the stuff that I enjoy and who it resonates with, that naturally becomes, for me, it becomes my target audience. How you say like, because let's say example, we had Ben on here, Ben Anderson. You were just chatting with him and stuff, and really like I was watching a podcast, like re-listening to the podcast, and I was like, he sounds exactly like Andrew Huberman, right? Like the way he speaks, the way he put his schedule together and everything, and I was like, naturally, like I like listening to Andrew Huberman. He's a great podcast. And then Ben jumped on here. I was like, oh, very similar content that I'm consuming, that he's consuming as well too. And as we kind of grow our community with Flow In, Flow Out, Peak Performance Academy, Exit Build, and samnang and all of this, I think we're going into the forefront of like new digital age and everything of working from home and people transitioning from maybe first like nowadays I don't think people just have one career. It's hard to do that now, especially at our age where the rate of like the internet, working from home and all this. I think there's more to just having one career, right? I've had a corporate career, sales career, now I have a coaching career. Right? Those are like three major different career changes. And for me, I think, even with like Ben, he's thinking ahead of, he has his core career here. What is he thinking in the future of like, hey, what might potentially change? Because there's a lot of things that do change. And we actually have to like keep being strategic and being skillful, and the skill of problem solving, putting the podcast together, and just figuring it out as you go. As you could say, it's like it's a real skill in itself. And for me, it's like uh, to me the podcast is like leaving a digital footprint. So if anybody else wanted to follow our footsteps, eventually if we become millionaires and great speakers on stage and stuff, everybody could follow our podcast and say like, hey, they actually did the work. So that's what I think organically for me, I do a lot of introspective work. Like, who am I as a person? Who do I want to attract? That's the type. And I think episode 20 now, and we're starting to attract a lot of similar mindset people in the health and fitness, mental health, and personal development. So which is neat, man. I'm super
You you
super
got
proud
you
of it.
got my you got my mind spinning on something, man, and tell me what you think of this. And I think it's very
Yeah.
synonymous to the way this started, also with the guests. And what if the core message of the tangible outcome is to help people just get started on that next chapter?
Yeah. I
You
think
know,
that's what life coaching is. Like when I put it in the
right?
first paragraph of my website, I was like, are you in that transition phase where gray area, right? One career shifting to new career, maybe getting married, having kids, right? That there's a lot of struggle and a lot of uncertainty in that area, and that's what causes a lot of like times when you have to make a lot of decisions and stuff. Having people to support, or even listening to other people talk about going through those struggles, it helps. It helped me, when I was going through a lot of my stuff, I was watching a lot of like positive stuff and reading like relationship books, listening to relationship podcasts. So there's going to be somebody that's out there that's probably changing their career, probably want to level up their physique or something into that transition or switch to a healthier lifestyle. And I think that's what, we are speaking to. And when we
It's
speak to
it's
that, I think they come to us.
it's giving people permission to start, right? And
Yeah.
I think and it's very and we want to talk about organic, right? I mean, how synonymous is that and how we started? And I think that we gave ourselves permission to start by just
Yeah.
simply saying, "Hey, you want to record the next call and we'll publish it." Right? And that I think that so many people need to be able to give themselves that permission, right? And for me too, like I have to give myself permission to start on things. I'm a procrastinator by trait. It's just what I do. I procrastinate. I put it off. I put it off. I put it off until I absolutely have to do it. And
Yeah.
every single time I do that, I get the same exact result, which is typically I always crush it. Like I am very good at like when I get it done, it's good. But what I realize is that by the time I start and I get myself stressed, I force myself to become
So
stressed by
stressed.
procrastination.
You're
I
thinking about
realize
it.
how easy the work is, and if I had just gotten started a week ago, 2 weeks ago, it would have been done, and I could have cleared my head and been
Yeah.
on to the next thing. But I purposely like, or not even purposely, I think I do it unintentionally and subconsciously. I put this mental baggage in place, and sometimes you just need that permission just to start. And there's a actually I I've been reading uh, little excerpts from what is it from Tim Ferriss
For our work week
oh,
or
no,
Tools of
it's a
Titan.
big Tools of the
Tools of Titan.
Titans.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been reading like little excerpts on that, and I forget exactly who it was in there that said this one, but he talks about writing down 20 ideas every day. And what he found was is that he would struggle with getting 20 new, fresh, good ideas every single day. But he wanted to do this exercise for himself. So what he did is he gave him permission to write down bad ideas.
Yeah.
The point wasn't to put a good idea, every single idea needed to be good. The point was that he wanted to get himself into ideation, and he
Right.
wanted to get himself into that space, which means giving himself permission to write down bad ideas. And
Yeah.
I've literally used that now to this day as I'm in the process of standing up now a second podcast because of the success that we've had with this so far. I now see the value of this and how I can do this more related to my business. So I'll talk about that another time. But I've been writing down ideas of like what that podcast is going to do. And when I get my writer's block, like everybody gets, where you're like, oh, I just can't get the right word. I can't do the right thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, it's okay. Give yourself permission to write down the wrong thing, right? Just write down the wrong thing. Who cares? It's still a step forward in the right direction. And ultimately that helps me get to what I'm looking for anyways, way, way faster. And I think, when I think about what we're doing here, I mean, look at Ben. And we got the message back from Ben, and he's like, "Hey, I started,"
Yeah.
with the next chapter and like his social handles, right? Look at Eamon, right? He's like, he
Yeah.
talked about the goal, and now he's like, "Hey, I started."
Yeah.
Um,
And let me
so
tell you a little bit about Eamon. So we hopped on another coaching call afterwards, and I literally just gave him a ton of value, and he was so ecstatic and so excited and about the coaching call and like what he could see what was happening, and he posted on his Facebook. He was running a 5K, and he was like, he posted something on there, but organically he wrote it. I didn't ask him, he wrote it, and then a thread of maybe like 30 different comments on there, and that I'm actually like actively engaging on there. I'm like cheering him on, cheering with the people that are cheering on with him. So we created like a thread there, so organically, right? That to me, like, I didn't pay for anything, I didn't tell him to do anything. I just told him, hey, anybody that needs some coaching, so just let him know. So he posted it, and we created that little thread. And I'm excited to see his journey as well too, because we've known each other for a long time. We sat in like chemistry or science class, and I know he's always been a big guy. I've been a chubby guy, but I've kind of he knew how consistent I was, and he knew I was a guy, to be able to help him with that, because one, we're good friends, and to me, I talk a lot about, we talk about organic and everything. I like this word community a lot. I say it's our community. I'm not saying it's like my community. It's like all of us, right? When we say it's the collective vibrations and everything, we are actually helping him raise his hope and excitement and everything. He could see the future and everything, and he himself have organically created his own role, hey, support group as well too, which is super neat to see, you know, what other people are doing it, because I like when that happens, because you can see, for me, like when I coach, I can see the glimmer, the excitement in people's eyes. So that's kind of like what I shoot for. Yeah.
It's the same thing even with me with my clients, right? When I bring on my clients, if they're starting up a new strategy, a new go-to-market strategy, they're starting up a new lead generation strategy. It's the same thing. Like it's so funny, man. Like I brought on a business. The business does $17 million a year in annual revenue, and over the last 2 years, they hadn't brought on a single net new customer. So they brought me in, and they were like, "Hey, Danny, can you help us with our sales and marketing strategies?" And originally, I said no. They ended up getting me to come over, and I started doing it. And then all of a sudden, we kind of cracked the egg on it, and we figured out how to get businesses interested in them. So we started pursuing that. And what I realized in that regard too is it wasn't that, like, I'm talking to these guys. I mean, the executive room there probably had enough money that to fund, a small town, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
these are wealthy individuals, and they've obviously been very successful in their business so far, but they hit this plateau and they couldn't figure out how to break through to the next realm. And the same thing is it wasn't, I presented ideas, they had such a tangible outcome that they could get started, not like in a week, but literally like the next day, and we did. So again, it gave them the permission to start. And then
Yeah.
once we started it, we started to refine it, and then you start working out the inner details of what this whole process means for them for lead generation. Like, how much bandwidth is it going to take, how much resources, how much time, how much money. All of that stuff doesn't necessarily need to be solved up front. And I think too many times we think it needs to be solved up front, especially those that are like entering into entrepreneurship. I think you can easily feel that. I know I feel it, where you're leaving a stable job, you're leaving stable income, and now it's on you to put bread on the table, right? It's on
Mm-hmm.
you to make sure that the lights stay on. And that permission to get started and realize, like, it's okay if you don't have everything in place when you first start, but you have to be willing to do the work to figure it out quickly as you go.
Yeah.
But if you never start and you try and figure all that out, you can go into analysis paralysis, and then you
Yeah.
end up in the same place that you were before, and nothing changes. And now a year's gone by, and it's like free beer tomorrow kind of thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow,
Yeah.
and then you actually get started.
You know, my whole, yeah, it aligns, like my whole philosophy of just starting is like you actually develop into the person that you're supposed to be. Like, to me, is like, okay, now I'm an entrepreneur. I feel like I'm full entrepreneur. Before, I felt like I was kind of putting the pieces together and everything. Entrepreneurship, maybe corporate world and everything, just learning these skills. But then when I shifted into this person, right, it's a developing, right? It's not perfect. I don't even know how I'm going to turn out in 5 years, but I'm acting like I'm going to be somebody, something in 5 years by acting today in this present moment and everything, right? And today, the only thing that I can do is to actually like be present here in this podcast and to continue to develop into that person. And for me, it's like I chose this path of entrepreneurship. When I reflect back along, why, like, there's times where I struggle with myself. It's like, why did I choose this route? Why everybody is, at their safe job and they got the steady income and they got the house. It's like, I always listen to my, I guess, like my intuition, and it feels more as I do it, even though I reflect sometimes and think outside of that. It's like, no, but I am at peace with myself. I'm supposed to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now at this moment, even though like I feel like I'm not there. But that is a process of developing. The process that it sucks. It's kind of uncertain. There's also certainty because I know that I built enough skills throughout my life to where I am that I could actually predict, but also not 100% sure of what it's going to turn out and develop to. Like, back in the day, like when we take pictures, now we have the digital cameras and stuff. Sometimes you take these pictures with what is it? And then you have to go to like the pharmacy and get it developed and stuff.
Yep.
Out of 30 pictures, maybe 12 of them are good. 12 of them might be like fantastic. And you throw it away the rest and stuff. And like you said, it's like good ideas, bad ideas. When you talk about going through these ideas and like being creative process and stuff, the creative process, you get good ideas and then you get bad ideas. But when you get to like bad ideas, at least you can discard them quicker, right? The faster you go and the faster you do things, that's how I roll. It's like, if, okay, maybe this didn't work out. Like, for example, I did the life coaching call and I was going to do something with like concepts or like 52 big concepts. Nobody attended, but I was like, maybe I switch it to something else, but a very similar idea because I kept moving and kept thinking about it and stuff. So I changed it to something else, I just configured it. But that process is one, it helps you reduce stress. I mean, if you always think like, one, I live here in the present moment, but I also think a lot about what I'm trying to develop, And I don't necessarily tell people what I'm developing because what I guess it's a strategy that I've done like back and forth. I would tell people, like, hey, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. And when it doesn't happen at that time that you expect or you tell people, it feels like a failure, you know?
Yeah.
It feels like a failure at that time, but it's like, okay, maybe I'm not a millionaire by like my goal was to be a millionaire by like 35. If I kept telling everybody that I was going to be a millionaire, I was like, it would have felt like a failure or something. So let's say I know that's my goal, but I don't know exactly when it's going to happen. So I don't really give anybody like a timeline, but I can show people that, hey, I'm working towards something, right?
It's
And I
uh,
think,
it's a growing in public, right?
yeah,
And that's something that literally even this podcast is about, right? It's growing in public. It's being willing to put yourself out there in a public setting, such as social media, podcasting, all that type of stuff, right? Um,
yeah,
and being willing to share your story. So that's also part of it, right? It's get started and then grow in public and document it, and then that gives you tangible proof because, like Hormozy even talks about, right? Like you want to have confidence. It's confidence is based off of the things that you've done, not the things that you haven't done yet, right?
yeah,
So as you're doing it, and like that's the beauty of starting us, right? And that's the cool thing about identity too, right? Is once you start something, you actually change your identity. You are doing it, therefore you
yeah.
have that.
And you do have to change your identity to keep it going because I mean, there's times where I go in and out of like my older Danny. I'm like, what I'm saying? I get stressed out and stuff. But if you put yourself out there enough, you're right. I can't. And it's a feeling like I was reflecting a lot. I was like, I feel like such a great sense of peace now at my life at like 38, where knowing like, hey, I made that transition to lifestyle coaching. Eventually, in my head, I was like, I'm gonna make enough money and then I'm gonna switch into this career. I was like, why just do it now? And that brought me a greater sense of peace. And it's like I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. And to be honest, like I actually thought out like I would be like 50 or like 60 before I started switching into like lifestyle coaching or like life coaching. But it was like, you know what? I'm proud of myself for actually taking the leap of doing that now,
Yep.
right? And struggling right now because I can struggle right now, which is okay, right? Because I'm not at a like part of my life where like I need this money or anything, or I have, I've been very strategic with everything, but it's a time where like this is the greatest opportunity for me to do it now. If I don't do it now, I probably will regret.
Well, I think you brought up another really interesting point too, right? Which is part of that starting process, and I think this is the part we don't like when we look at something we want to do, when we look at the future of what we want, we we see the pleasure of where we could be, right? So you throw out like if I'm a millionaire, you can understand the pleasure around what does that mean, right? Of being financially free, that type of stuff. Um, but we can visualize that. But two, I don't think we think about this part enough. And this is we always hear people say fall in love with the journey. What does that actually mean, right? And I think the falling in love with the journey part of that is that okay, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to try and do this thing because now I'm the one in control of my income, I'm in control of my life, all of it.
Yeah,
Yes, there's a piece with that, but that also comes with that when things are tough, that's when you need to be able to smile at it all and be grateful that you have that tough moment. Can't make a
Yeah.
mortgage. I'm happy about that. Why am I happy about that? Because I chose this life, and that's part of what I have to do and solve for me to be able to go and get to the next level. Like none of it just comes free. None of it's just
Nah.
easy. There is no get rich quick or easy button or any of that bullshit. So literally, you have to, when you look at what you want to do, look at, I mean, a great example is Eamon. He wants to run a 5K this year, right? So what does that really mean for him? Well, he's got to suffer throughout his journey to get to that 5K. He's going to have to go out. He's going to have to run for the first time. And
Mhm.
if he hasn't been running, like he's going to have to focus in on fitness. These things that aren't fun, right?
They're
It's not fun.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's not easy, but those are, and there's going to be probably moments where he's exhausted and laid out and doesn't want to do anything, right? And those moments that normally break people, those are the moments that normally people are like, why am I doing this? I should just go back to my old life. This is stupid, right? When that moment comes, the narrative needs to be switched, and you need to be like, this is exactly what
Yeah.
I was looking for.
Exactly.
I
I
was
think that's what you.
looking for this moment, and I'm going to deal with this pain today rather than putting the pain off.
Yeah.
Because if I put the pain off, so I have pleasure today, well, eventually that pain is going to catch up. And it might be the ultimate pain, which I think we all want to avoid, which is laying on your deathbed and having major regrets that you didn't live the life that you wanted to live.
Yeah, it's the regret. I can't remember the story, but like when they interviewed like all those people that are getting near their death and stuff, and that's one of the points is like they weren't being true and authentic to themselves, and they regret that, and that hit home for me a lot. It's like I don't ever want to live with regret. That's why I write on the threads and everything. Those are basically like my journal documentations of like my thoughts and stuff. And it was just me doing a lot of self reflection and just writing like I don't want to feel like regret. I also want other people to not feel like they're living in regret and like being their authentic self, right? I think honestly, I think people are afraid to express themselves, and I've coached people through, through depression. It's like they're not comfortable talking about it, but when you give people space to express themselves a little bit, and they start to see that the expression of yourself is really a healing process, of personal development, of like learning, hey, there's the stuff that we kind of just hide and don't really talk about, but actually we should actually really be talking or facing it. And the pain that, like you talk about, the pain that you avoid eventually comes out somewhere else. It could be in regret, it could be in some kind of disease, and that you can't really pinpoint, because that's how it works. That's how the universe works. It's like if you're suppressing something, something else is gonna pay in that way. But so it's like how, and we both follow Alex Hormozy, and he's a great mentor, and he's very stoic. But it's really, I've done a lot of like hard shit, and I don't like try to like brag, but it's like I've reframed everything. Everything's gonna suck, but it's gonna be all right.
Yeah, you got to
It's
keep
gonna be all right at the end of the day. Like we talk about like death and money, and like when you meditate on that stuff, it's like the honest truth is like you can't take money with you. You can't take money with you.
nope.
The only thing that I think that you could leave after you die is your thoughts, which at the end of the day, to me, is like your consciousness. How aware you are, how conscious you are. Us leaving, making this podcast, us writing, us creating content. That one will leave an influence or imprint on somebody's thought, and they might share that with their kids, and eventually, to me, that's a big why, right? It's sharing knowledge, sharing wisdom and stuff, and also developing at the same time, because that, to me, is what I believe we were meant to be put here on earth, is just to be individual, and chase whatever that we want.
Yeah, no, man, I totally agree. And I know I do got to drop, so we're gonna have to wrap this
Yeah.
one up a little bit shorter today. But no, I mean, I think a couple key takeaways that I've gotten from just this conversation. And by the way, too, I just want to emphasize this, right? So Samnang and I hop on. We always have like a quick chat. Normally, it lasts less than 5 minutes before we hit record. And Samnang and I were talking about like, what are we going to share in this episode? And I was like, well, let's just chat about like I got these ideas of like what we
We're
can do on the
brainstorming.
podcast. He's like, hit record. I'm like, oh yeah. So like this is all stuff that like we're doing in real time, right? And so I'm coming to the conclusion though. It's like, okay, give people permission to start. I think that's a core tangible outcome that we do here.
Permission to start. Yeah.
And then create problems, right? So give yourself permission to start creating problems for yourself. It sounds very counterintuitive, but here's the deal. Like, when you start something new, inevitably you are creating a problem. It
Yeah.
just is what it is. That's another way to look at it. You're creating opportunity and problem at the same time. You have to solve for it. For instance, as soon as we started this, the first problem we had is like, oh, how do I share a podcast online? That's a problem. Not a major
Figure it
one,
out.
not like a one to like hold me down or stop me, but it's a problem. And then you go solve it, right? So it's creating into your problems, it's creating problems and creating into your problems and giving yourself that permission to start. And I think that that's kind of what we're doing here. And, I hope that that continues to resonate as we continue to share these stories and we bring on some more guests. So I
Yeah, I
don't know,
think
Sam,
so,
you
man.
got any closing thoughts?
No, I think it was a great episode. It was a good catch up one real quick. We do have some good guests lined up as well too. So I'm excited to have them on and pick their brains and continue to have them come on and update us with the updates. And as a process of developing, it's always updates, right? So a podcast is basically just updating each other, what we're doing, how we're growing, and how we can share each other's information that we're learning as well too. So I think. Um, Other than that, I think enjoy today's podcast and appreciate everybody watching. Danny is gonna get going. I got a coaching call schedule as well too. So, but yeah, man, I don't know what else to say today. I think I've been feeling really blessed and grateful. The Cambodian New Year's is next weekend, so I'm gonna take a break from work and then go celebrate. Work through the weekends.
There you go. Well, guys, this has been FIFO, Flow In, Flow Out. New
Yes.
episodes coming out every Monday at 6 a.m., Friday at 4 p.m. So we have another one coming out today. But yeah, looking forward to continuing to share some more content with you guys and helping you guys get started.
All right. Thank you guys for watching us or listening to us.
We'll see ya.
All right, Danny. Talk to you later, okay?